Hi, everyone. Pastor Galen, lead pastor at Shine Hills Church. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. We hope that these podcasts will be a real encouragement to you on your spiritual journey. You can also connect with Shine Hills at shinehills.org. Hope you enjoy the program.
Across the street and around the world, Shine Hills.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. We've got Nathan Winters in the house, and Nathan, it's fun to get together and just talk about, really, we have lived life, and we've come together for just a hunk of time to say what's happening in our world.
That's true.
And the biggest thing in my world is I still can't smell.
That's so tough.
It's tough. And so you're telling me all about this pumpkin spice latte. I can't smell anything. It smells like nothing to me.
I know there's a lot of rebellion when you talk about pumpkin spice, but this smells like a pleasant campfire on a cold evening.
And we've got to have that right now because it's cold here in Cheyenne today, and it feels like winter. Guys, last night we had that blast come through, and so it's been kind of chilly. So it usually hits us once, and then it kind of gets nice, and then, man, you better button down the hatch because you got to get those sprinklers.
It was a little
out.
Groundhog Day this morning. You know, it's like it's cold out there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was hard. I got out and worked out, and it was hard getting to my truck and starting that thing up and going. But so you were just telling me as we were walking in, you've got a cool speaking engagement. Just unpack that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, I had the opportunity to do this last year as well in North Carolina at the Shepherds 360 conference. And that was where I had the privilege of meeting Erwin Lutzer. Well, he's going to be back there again this year. And Dr. Albert Mohler, a hero of mine, I've often thought if I ever had to speak where he was in the room, it might be very concerning because he would recognize almost everything that's being said.
It's his stuff. It's like, well, I wrote that.
And almost the same thing is true of Dr. Lutzer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Anyway, it's going to be a wonderful opportunity.
That was a year ago that you spoke
It's
there?
astonishing.
Oh, my gosh.
Time
You've been doing this
flies.
that long?
Believe it or not, it's amazing.
Wow, I did not realize that.
So,
well, that's really cool. So what's your topic this time?
You know, I'm going to start off with something, and it would be recognizable to most people here in Cheyenne. But I'm going to start off with this. In 1943, C.S. Lewis wrote a book called The Abolition of Man. He didn't write the book at first. It was a series of radio broadcasts. But in that, he highlights something. Now, mind you, this is at the peak of the deadliest war in human history.
Right.
And he feels so concerned about something that he sees that he begins to talk about this in public. And eventually it turns into The Abolition of Man, a great book of his. But in that, the very first line reads this way: I doubt whether we are sufficiently attentive to the importance of elementary textbooks.
Oh, wow.
And in that, what he does is he starts dissecting a certain textbook written by two guys. And, you know, this is what I love about C.S. Lewis. He was so conscious of wanting to be kind to everyone. He changed the names of the two professors who wrote the textbook into fictional Latin names. And then he even changes the name of the book. He just calls it The Green Book.
Okay.
But we now know that to be, because I'm not C.S. Lewis, I can say it, it was a book entitled The Control of Language, A Critical Approach to Reading and Writing. And in that book, what these two professors objected to was when you come up to a waterfall, and they were talking about a poem by, I believe it was Walt Whitman, this waterfall. So Mr. Whitman describes it as sublime. And what these guys were objecting to, and they even used the word disgust, they were objecting to the fact that you would call a waterfall sublime or pretty. And they were saying you can't do that because that would be a statement of truth, and all you can truthfully state is how you feel about a subject.
Okay.
Well, Lewis was pointing out, if you can't objectively state that something is beautiful, if it's only subjective to your own version of what is a truth, that's relativism. And he considered this at the height of World War II as one of the great dangers to Western civilization. And all I can say is C.S. Lewis, all those years ago, was spot on.
Well, and to think that he could see something so nuanced. I mean, until you unpacked it, I wasn't seeing the nuance of, but I see what you're saying. It's like, well, if it's only real because I feel it is real, that's real for me or real for you. It's like, no, it's
right.
We can just objectively say, no, that's beautiful.
Right.
Yeah,
well, that very nuance, the fact that it's difficult to see, that's the other thing. Let me read a paragraph from his book. But that very thing is what he was pointing at. It's difficult to see that. But here's what he writes. The very power of the authors depends on the fact that they are dealing with a boy who thinks he's doing his English prep work. He has no notion that ethics, theology, and politics are all at stake while he's working on this. It's not a theory they put into his mind, but an assumption. And this is a crucial thing that he brings out. It's an assumption, which 10 years hence, so 10 years later, its origin forgotten, its presence unconscious, will condition him to take one side in a controversy which he has never recognized as a controversy at all. But they're building into that boy that you cannot objectively state something as beautiful or pretty or sublime, but he never even thought of it because it didn't come to him in a philosophy class. It was something that he learned in an elementary school textbook.
Wow.
And so now he's built an entire worldview based on something that is an assumption that's being taught by two professors.
Well, gosh, you just tapped into a whole bunch of things that imagine my buttons, because that's what, I've been dealing with a lot of curriculum for our youth and our children, not youth, it's our children.
Right.
And what we're placing in their minds and making, subjecting them to, it's definitely a different worldview.
Right.
And it's interesting to me how people can't necessarily see a biblical worldview. It seems like it's so common to me. It's like, well, this is true and this is real.
Right.
And others would say, no, it's relative, and it's relative based on what you feel or what you think.
Right.
And that's the relative truth. And those two different worldviews are still in our school systems and still in our minds today.
We're surrounded by those worldviews.
Yeah.
I was talking about this, the philosophy of the educators in one generation becomes the worldview taught in schools in the next.
Yeah.
And there's no way around it. And we're surrounded today by people who are taking worldview and pushing it as far as you can. You probably didn't know this before today, but did you know that the new Superman is now not, he's now basically a transsexual Superman.
No. When is this coming out? How did I miss this?
It's a new series of comic books.
Comic books. It's not a movie or anything.
Well, it may eventually become that. That's the issue.
Gotcha.
But you look at it, Superman in time past was considered like the
All-American.
What was it? Yeah, the American way. I forget what the actual statement is, but Superman was a guy that came up at the height of the Cold War.
Okay.
And he was supposed to embody American values to the world. He dressed in red, white, and blue. He was a giving, selfless guy, sometimes a little on the violent side, but his heart still was to try to help people. Okay.
Yep.
Well, now the new American way is something that the rest of the world, by the way, I was reading this just the other day. The French president and a group of educators in Paris, France. We always think of France as being radical leftists. They literally are pointing at America and saying, guys, we might be a little bit different, but don't do that. That's nuts.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's recent. Wow. And it's the wokeism. It's the whole critical race theory and all of these ideas, which are some of the most radical forms of Marxism. Yeah. And they're all imbued with a kind of moral authority, a worldview that is in direct opposition to the truth of Scripture.
Right. Well, and that's why, we all are, I think we're probably so subjected to all these things that we probably even our own selves have to be careful not to be nuanced or be willing to be evaluated. It's like, well, that nuance is going to take you a direction that's you're not going to like the end of that, but to stay right on where Scripture is and what it says. That's that biblical worldview is, well, it's not popular. It's difficult, but people recognize it. What I've, teaching God's word is like, we're bringing out some truths right now. It's called Truths from Seuss. I love that. It's really creative. I
saw the intro video.
I wish I was creative to tell you I did that, and I didn't. That's the guy over there in the corner. That's a lot of it comes out of his head. But anyway, there are truths, and all truth is God's truth. And so if it's true truth, it's God's truth.
That's right.
And so you can pick up these ideas even from a book that I think is very probably secular, entertaining, just for kids. It's like there's all these truths that have been falling out of some of these pictures, and but when you square it with Scripture, it's like, well, you can see the alignment of irresponsibility of this Maisie who flew, she laid this egg in the leaves, and I made the comment about being, let your yes be yes, no be no. And she was kind of this wishy-washy, and didn't come back and take care of business, so to speak, of taking care of her young. But the idea that here's God's truth in the midst of that. So even if it's a bad example, it's like, well, here's God's truth in contrast to the world's truth of saying, yeah, I'll maybe we'll be there, or if it's not convenient, I'm going to go do something else. But anyway, that true biblical worldview is hard to maintain, and here we are injecting another pretty serious level to our kids.
Right. Well, I think part of the challenge is that we fail to recognize that we are on a battleground of the gods. We're in the midst of a struggle, and these are religious claims being made by many people. Yeah. And pop psychology today insists that you are who you are based on your feelings rather than objective facts. And our nation is actually, and we've watched it. We watched it a lot last year, 2020, and we're watching the echoes of those very struggles as our nation is starting to buckle under the question of which truth to follow, and even the question of whether there is truth at all. Yeah. And that's where, in the work that you and I have done together, and then the work that God has called me to, I point this out, that into this intersection, this junction of truth and culture, what we want to stand for is to help other people stand up and say, yes, waterfalls can be sublime, truth is knowable, and mankind cannot be abolished in this sea of made-up feelings. Right. And so when we talk about pop culture and everything, I was listening to a book, and before you think this is special or all, it frustrated me so bad. It was by a guy named Neil deGrasse Tyson. It was called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, I think is the title of it. But what bothered me so much is the entire first chapter. This was about 3 weeks ago. The entire first chapter was a whole bunch of truth claims. So in this case, he was using astrophysics as a religion, but then he specifically calls out religion for being religious, while at the same time, if you're objective, all you can sense is that this guy is saying a bunch of religious things. And so, but he was making the statement basically that you have to assume that his assumptions are better than your statements about faith in Christ. Right. And so in all of that, we're surrounded in so many different areas, whether it's from the field of what some call science, or all those different things. We live in a place where we have to be aware. Yeah. We have to be
aware
conscious
of when we're being deceived.
Yes.
Yes. And in the nuance, the part really hits home with me, is because we both have been talking about some of the curriculum that's coming out with our kids, and the some of it's not so nuanced. I mean, it's really right there in front of you to see some of these issues, and parents are concerned. Right. And I'm trying to figure out the best approach and how to do this. But what you're showing me, even through C.S. Lewis, is that he saw the nuanced things that were being taught to children, and that needed to be changed right then, or that's else, some of the worst things that could ever happen. And we're living in some of the worst things, I think, that can happen, because I think, I've brought these things to adults that I would think they could see these things. And, okay, so then I've got to take a little parenthetical thought here. So, because I want you to weigh in on this.
I enjoy your parenthetical thoughts.
And then we'll go back to the Mueller, because I want to hear the rest of that story. Yeah. But I've heard this like 3 different times now. Our president said it. I've heard a school board member say it. I've heard 2 high up administrative people in our school system say it. Is that personally, I believe this. Mm-hmm. But publicly, I have to endorse this, and they're different. They don't square with each other, and so if you believe something personally and you don't believe it publicly, or you vote for something publicly, it's like, well, I would never teach that to my kids. I would never let my kids have access to that. I understand that, but publicly, this is the best thing because this is the world we live in. Well, when I heard that, it made me realize this is the worldview of. I don't know if it's the worldview. It's the philosophy of our leaders right now. Yeah. And to me, that is they know the truth, but they're not applying the truth. Can you make any sense of this?
Well, I think, stepping back from that statement, boy, that's so telling. This is a person that has a worldview that is coming in conflict with another religion that people fail to recognize as a religion.
Yeah.
And they're saying,
That's
I
true.
can't teach this as true, but I have to, because there are people that are leaning in favor of a particular religion called secularism.
Yeah.
And so what that is a clear recognition that many elements of our world have been taken over by this ideology that is at odds with a Christian worldview.
Yeah.
And so, and we find that even, and this is something I don't think C.S. Lewis could have ever anticipated. He was talking about textbooks, but we found out just recently that Legos have begun to redo a lot of the stuff as they try to push into the minds of young boys an ideology.
Okay.
And so when we talk about, and you think, wow, that's quite a jump. We were talking about school textbooks and everything else. What I'm wanting to point out.
It's this philosophy they're teaching.
Yes. And it's at all levels.
Yeah.
And so about 13 years ago, Lego found out that 90% of their Lego sets were being sold to boys.
Okay.
And that makes a lot of sense. When we talk about boys, and this was pointed out by a guy named Al Mohler, but Dr. Mohler was pointing this out. Boys, it's study after study, show that they think spatially.
Okay.
They think in a way where building blocks or building, a long time ago it was erector sets, all these different things. They take different things and they will put them together and stack them in certain ways that are constructive. And of course, because they're boys, they also like to destroy them too.
That's true, yeah.
You know?
Yeah, right.
And that girls, by and large, what we notice is that they think relationally.
Yep.
So, and my children are a perfect example of that.
And
I guarantee.
my two were classic.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that in a second.
Yeah, we have this closet in our house, and it's stuffed with, it must be 100,000 Legos. They'll build crazy stuff. They have these rubbery versions of the old erector set that you just click together, and I've seen them build all sorts of fun things out of that. It blows my mind sometimes how they can duplicate things out of those toys. In the meanwhile, my little girl will be in a room around the corner back there. Now, she loves animals, but she has all of these animals spread out, and they're not constructing anything. They're talking to each other.
Yep, exactly.
This relationship.
Yep, exactly.
And so this horse is saying something to this horse.
You did not teach these kids this.
No.
My kids were the exact same way. There was my son had two cousins, and they loved playing Legos when they were little. They played Legos all the time. And two of them turned out to be engineers, and one is in the medical field. And they just love constructing and building. And even today, all of them do things with their hands, also building things and remodeling things or whatever they do. But you're right. That's how things work is so big.
Right.
And then my daughter, I mean, she would take popsicle sticks and they would talk to each other and be, family.
Right.
Because it's all about relational.
Right.
And we used to kind of kid on that. It's like, man, look how no one taught these kids this.
Right.
The boys are this and the girls are this. So, okay. So what is Lego doing that's the dangerous part of what you're saying?
Well, their president, actually, as a reporter, Wyatt Grantham Phillips, he reported this. Lego announced Monday that the company will work to remove gender stereotypes from its toys following a global study that looks into how creative play is gendered. Okay. Now, notice this. Gender is no longer just a noun describing something. It's now a verb used to describe how you are performing certain things. I mean, it's become so weird, this new conversation. And in that, what they're saying is that they are trying to bow to the whole idea of trying to turn one gender into another or make things fluid. And so you look at that, you think, now, the vast majority of people that are going to be buying the toys into the future are going to be little boys who want to construct things. Yeah. But they're doing everything they can to introduce something that is opposite natural law. I was pointing this out to someone yesterday. And we were talking about, and this is a person that comes from a more libertarian persuasion, but I was pointing out that what the Bible aligns with is something that other people in time past recognized as simple natural law. That there is an ordered universe, an ordered cosmos. And into that ordered cosmos, which we understand to be created by an orderly God, there are certain things that are just simply true. We recognize this from Romans chapter 1. So did the founding fathers of this country. we recognize this order was something provided by God. Right. And when we look at the modern pop psychology, they're trying to say that this order is all messed up, and we have to reorder it in a whole different way.
Well, it's the whole thing. If you boil it down, it's like the nucleus of the family. Instead of having everybody laughs about the beaver cleaver kind of family. Right. It's like, a man does man's work and woman does woman's work. Not that they can't do some of the other things. I'm not saying that, but it was just classic. Right. Men have roles, women have roles. This is the family structure, and this is where the children fit in. Well, now that family is redefined in so many ways. It's like it's almost a lost in the true way that God put this thing together.
That's right.
It's getting lost. So no, I see that. But so what is Lego doing this? How do they do this to push this fluidity you talked about?
Well, so they had the other day, it was several sets, and what they'll do is they'll introduce pink and blue, but as boys in pink and all those different things. They have rainbow sets now, a lot of different things. But one of the things they're saying is we're going to do everything we can to take the discussion of gender out of the mix. So everything's going to become essentially that whole thing where there is no understanding of boy or girl or anything else. And so it becomes something that's a very bleak thing. This is why Christianity is so beautiful. Yeah. What we're pointing out is that God created male and female. We find it in the beginning, right in Genesis. And into that ordered, structured world, there is peace and there's comfort, there's relationship, there's family. You are not just a person walking around alone as an island, bumping into other islands constantly. You actually are part of a whole. And ultimately, because God created you and God calls out to you in love to have a relationship with him, you are part of him as well. Yeah. And so there's a joy, a peace, a freedom in recognizing that natural law and God's construct of the world is a place where you can find joy and peace.
Well, and I think it all goes back to that the fluidity is that we're all made in the image of God.
Yeah.
Is that male has a certain amount of those stronger characteristics, and then the female has the creativity, the beauty, the nurturing, all those things. You put that together, they're all the image of God, but they're packaged in a male version and a female version, and those have roles to play. And it's just like, and then naturally our bodies, we know that women have babies, men do not, and so it's like it's not something that it's not philosophy.
Right.
It's real.
Right.
And God put it that way. And I see what you're saying. Yeah, they're trying to just another level of trying to blur the lines. I have seen those Legos. I didn't put all that together. I was just kind of going, kind of rolled my eyes. It's like, I get what this is about. But you're seeing it. You're saying that there's more social, can I say engineering? Is that what?
Exactly.
Is that where that's going?
That was the grave concern all the way back in 1943 of C.S. Lewis.
Yep.
And that, by the way, is something that has been recognized throughout human history. Yep. Aristotle, in raising up the academy. Actually, you go prior to Aristotle, when you go to Socrates and then Plato, Socrates, actually his engagement, and the reason why he was forced to commit suicide was because he was reaching into the lives of young people and asking questions. And so when we look at that, we've always recognized that when people introduce ideas to our children, it matters.
Yes.
So whether it's a good idea or not, we have to just recognize that when they push these ideas into our youth, it matters. Now, secondly, if it matters, then it behooves the church and it behooves the parent to pay attention to what is being introduced. And it's for the same reason C.S. Lewis pointed out. What C.S. Lewis was saying is that little boy doesn't recognize that he is engaging in philosophy. He just simply thinks he's reading or playing.
Yeah, that's really true. And this kind of a good place maybe for us to land. But I think that one of the things, it's kind of been a mantra of mine of, okay, I'm getting access to some of the things that our kids are being taught. I've seen some of them. I'm disappointed. It would be a really kind word that I'm going to use, since I'm trying to be C.S. Lewis-like. I'm disappointed in where the direction of it. But the one thing that it's hard is it's like, so what do you do with this information? And I think one of it is just to make parents aware. Parents are men and women are having to work really hard to
Yeah.
make the family, and it's not going to get any easier, I don't think. And because of that, they, some of the things that just slide by, and I think we've really got to raise the awareness of what's being taught, and so that the parents can engage in that.
Right.
Then they have to decide. I mean, they're
Right.
the ones that are the stewards of really what goes in the hearts and minds of these kids, and so that's of their own kids, and I think that's it's a big challenge. And so
Yeah.
we're gonna talk more about that
That's
as we
good.
go forward, because
That's
we gotta figure out how to be a steward in our day of what C.S. Lewis saw a long time ago.
That's good.
We've got our own responsibility in our day as well.
Amen.
Well, in the meantime, and as you go about your life and you go and speaking to the world next week,
That's right.
be strong and very courageous. God bless you all.